My worst mistake of my life, I kissed 3 different guys in the club. Now I am divorced. I had done this to myself. My husband divorced me because he found out I had kissed 3 different guys in the club. I had made the worst mistake in my life, and I didn't mean to. I was slightly drunk because my husband and I had a fight, and I went and kissed guys in the club. I didn't know he was going to find out, and I didn't know the revenge he would carry out on me before divorcing me would be drastic. I had made sure to hide my tracks, but he had somehow found out. I hadn't even meant to kiss the guys. I was just angry. I didn't expect everything to lead up to divorce. It was something I didn't plan. It was something I expected my husband to forgive me if he ever found out, irrespective of the fact that one of the guys I had kissed in the club was his friend. Wasn't he supposed to let bygones be bygones? Why did he have to carry out a revenge on me that I haven't still recovered from and divorce me? He knew fully well I didn't have any money apart from his, yet he took it away from me all because I smooched lips with some guys. Was that normal? I mean, all he could have done was warn me never to try it again, and we would have progressed with our marriage. I guessed he never truly loved me if he did that to me. That was the only true explanation. My husband never loved me because we were supposed to stand beside each other through thick and thin. I had suspected from the very beginning that he was just marrying me because of my father's money. Then the unexpected happened and he didn't see any use for me again. That was why he acted like that, because I kissed a few guys. I mean, what was even his problem? I had just kissed them. It's not as if we made out or I slept with any of them. LOL, and so what if I did? Did that give him the right to divorce me and discard me like we hadn't been married for 5 years? My name is Miranda and I'm 30 years old, but I look 21 still. I'm sure you all reading this can already tell I'm a spoiled brat. Yes, I am. My daddy paid my bills up until he died, God rest him. My husband's name is Kieran and he's 30 years old too, I think. I don't keep all that information in my head. I was married to this man for 5D*MN years and he decided to end my life like this. He actually ruined my life. As I was saying, we were married for 5. We dated for 1. I met him when I was bartending at one of the popular beer spots in Atlanta. This was before they fired me 2 weeks after I met my husband because their supply was going missing. No, I wasn't the one that was reducing their supply. I wasn't and am not a chronic drinker. Anyway, my husband walked into the bar one evening and took a good long appreciative look at me, and I knew right there that I was either going to get married to him or we were going to hook up. LOL, we hooked up first and got married after a year of dating. When we were dating, he saw all sides of me. He knew I was a chronic partier and a lazy bum and couldn't cook to save my life, but he still wanted me. Now, I figure out why he wanted me all those years ago. He wanted me for my money. Technically, it was my father's money, but potato, right? My husband had wanted to start a new tech company. My father had the funds. It's so obvious now why he accepted all my excesses and never bothered me about it while we were dating and in our first year of marriage. He had wanted to be in my father's good books. That's sly. Too bad he didn't get what he wanted because reality hit. As I was saying, my husband knew all of my bad habits and tolerated it. He had even sponsored them sometimes. Taking me to parties, getting me the most expensive drinks. Basically, he pampered me just like my daddy had. I know you might be wondering why, if I was rich, why I'd been working as a bartender. Well, because I wanted to experience working class life. I had tried college and it didn't go well. I had tried the corporate 9 to 5 and I had absolutely loathed it. So I decided to do something more to my lifestyle. Free drinks and hot men looking to hook up after my shift. That was the life. My father never questioned me. And by the time my husband and I had come around to dating, I had been fired from my job, LOL. Dating my husband was great because he never took me for granted. It is now clear to me why. He showered me with love and affection and respect. He didn't shout at me or question me or beat me. He absolutely adored me. So I saw no harm in doing forever with him when he proposed. I had done almost everything except marry and have kids. I wanted to try that, and if I didn't like it, my daddy would just snap his fingers and everything would go away, or so I thought. I was totally foolish. My husband and I got married in a grand wedding. There had been local celebrities present, and all my friends and exes were there gossiping about how lush my wedding was. Just how I liked it. My husband was handsome, of course. Not so much now that he became the villain in my reality. And everyone was jealous of what I had. My daddy had gone all out to give me the best. In case you're wondering, I am an only child and my mom died when she gave birth to me. I'm trying to emphasize just how much I meant to my dad. Our honeymoon was at Santorini, and after that my daddy flew us to Milan and then to the Maldives. It was marvelous, the whole experience and everything, but I didn't know my whole life was about to change. My daddy gave my husband the funds he needed to use and start his company, and my husband babied me. I didn't know it was because I was a means to an end, but I found out when my father died. Yes, my father died immediately. We came back from our honeymoon and the bank swooped in immediately. He had borrowed according to them and he needed to pay back his loan with his assets even though he was dead. This was how they swept up and took all my funds. The funds that were supposed to be mine, they had seized it all up and carted it away. This was how I became at my husband's mercy. It didn't even take up to 2 years, and my husband's attitude towards me changed. Apparently, his business that my father had invested in began to do well, and he didn't need to suck up to anybody, so he could finally treat me how he wanted to. Everything began from our 2nd year of marriage. I had to learn how to cook because that was the only way he would give me money. Do you know this man went so far as making me iron his work clothes? LOL, after burning about 3 of his expensive shirts, no one told him to hide his clothes from me. But in all these things I had endured. I had stayed at his side and didn't run away even though I wanted to so many times. I stopped most of my habits because I didn't want to lose my husband, seeing as he was my only source of income. I did everything he asked. I went to occasions with him and smiled at his side even though what I wanted to do was dance and forget my sorrows in the music. I obviously couldn't do that. My husband and I endured our excesses until I couldn't take it again after 5 years. He decided one day to bring his mother into our house. Can you imagine being policed by both a man and his mother? It was a terrible experience for me. Everything I did was a mistake. My husband's mother complained during dinner and how terrible my food was and it was only fit for dogs. That I was the reason her son was skinny and didn't look like he had life in him ever since he had married me. I didn't take it as anything because people said mean things all the time and my husband wasn't skinny. She was just trash talking. But the trash talk continued. She told me every time that I wasn't getting this right and this shouldn't go this way, and I needed to sit up if I was to have children in this life. One of the things I heard so often was how she didn't even understand why and how her Don had married me. This was someone that had invited all her friends to her son and I's wedding to brag about the quality of the wedding. Old witch. What had pushed me to the breaking point of going back to my old habits? My husband and his stupid wants. The cause of our quarrels this time was how I had to get a job, and how he couldn't be buying me the things I needed again because he wanted to begin saving for our future children. He hadn't even discussed this with me. He had just brought it up at dinner and his answer was final. Can you believe his audacity? Children? Who had said I wanted children? How had he gotten to that delusional conclusion? Men never understood, did they? Well, we got into a heated argument that night and I stormed out of the house. Guess where I had gone to clear my head? No, not the club. I'd gone to get a drink and clear my head because I couldn't be in that suffocating house with my husband's mother glaring at me like I didn't have complete eyes, and I was an abomination, and with my husband talking to me like I was a child. I was totally sick of it. Terribly sick of it. I couldn't call out my friends because they also had their own homes and kids to take care of and prepare for school the next day. So I went drinking by myself, and it was a big mistake that I went alone because I ran into my ex at the bar. Such a little world. My ex was unmarried and more handsome than I had ever seen him. But nothing happened between us that night. I was sure of that. Just that I spilled my guts to him about everything that happened in my marriage, and he took me to a club to go and dance away my problems. And it was an out-of-this-world experience. It felt good being back in my own body, my world where I could just dance and not let anything bother me. Anyway, my ex took me back home at 2 a.m. when the whole house was dark, but I had a feeling my husband's mother was watching me as I creeped back into the house. I sat on nails the next morning, but my husband didn't say anything. His mother hadn't ratted it out to my husband, which was unusual. There was something totally wrong with that, but I had tried not to provoke her because I didn't want her to rat me out. I didn't know she was planning something else. She didn't even play out the pretense for long. All it took was me not doing what she wanted, and my husband's mother ran straight to my husband. That evening, my husband descended on me during dinner and how I was frolicking with other men while I was married to him. You all needed to see my husband that day, like he was ready to beat my life out of my body. But he didn't touch me. I tried explaining, but he didn't believe me. He chose his mother's words over mine. I had told him that I had only gone to see one of my friends. I even added that he could call her. And we had a lot to drink, and I had stumbled into my ex in our street. I didn't know how I had come up with that lie so fast, but it was a waste. My husband didn't speak to me for 2 weeks, and his mother taunted me each time that a no-good waste of space and her son would be better off if he divorced me immediately and found someone homely to marry who would give him the children he wanted. I couldn't let that happen while I was alive, so I had done the only thing that I had thought would make my husband forgive me. I had applied for a job at his company. He didn't know I had done that, and the people at the office knew he was married, but didn't know he was married to me. So I had gotten another 9 to 5 with his money. When my husband found out, he was okay with it and happy that I had started working and providing for the family. That in the next 2 years, with our accumulated savings, we could start our family. This was someone who owned the company and paid my salary saying that. But I had decided not to argue. I was happy that my husband was happy and my marriage wasn't on shaky grounds. However, I couldn't cope. I couldn't cope one bit. I needed money for my needs because my husband was still not providing for them. He was even expecting me to be saving up for imaginary kids, LOL. The salary of junior staff in the office was small, and I believe my husband kept the salary low on purpose. Immediately the monthly salary came, it would go to my skincare, makeup, accessories, and the like, and it was all finished up, like I hadn't even been paid for that month. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore, and I met up with my ex. My ex introduced me to a way to save up money and have it doubled. I had never known those types of things existed in this world until I had been informed about it. To start, I scraped up my savings of about $2,000 and gave it to my ex to invest in his thing for me. He returned with $10,000. I was shocked and tried it again. This time I put in the whole $10,000. I mean, it was working, so let me just put in everything, and when I've had enough, I'll stop. That had been the plan. I didn't know how foolish this deal with the devil was going to end up. My ex remitted $15,000 after I invested with him, and I became greedy. I stole my husband's money to invest. He usually kept some in a safe for our children, and I happened to see when he unlocked it one particular day. I took about $15,000 and added it to my $15,000. In my head, that would have given me about $60,000. I would have been rich, enough to last me about a year plus, and I could quit the job in my husband's company. But then my ex had to disappoint me. Should I have been disappointed? I should have seen it coming, shouldn't I? I'd been so blinded by my greed because I thought I could make more. I deceived myself and started the cycle of hot mess I landed myself in. A week after giving my ex the money, I didn't see from him or hear from him. I tried calling and I was in trouble. I made a big mistake at work. I messed up the numbers, which resulted in a client being angry, which resulted in my husband shouting at me in front of everyone at work. And then it was revealed I was his wife and a good-for-nothing who couldn't even do my job. Then I made another big mistake. With all the stress, I had thought my ex would be at the club he had taken me to a while ago. I really should never be in charge of making decisions because I sucked at them. I went to the club to go and find my ex, and I saw drinks and I decided to indulge. I mean, I was going through a lot. My husband treated me like I was a fool. If he found out I had lost this money, he would kill me. I didn't want to end up dead or worse, divorced. So I had gone to the club and I might have drank more than 2 mojitos because before I could blink, I was on the dance floor moving my body because liquor controlled me more than my brain, and I forgot about looking for my ex who had stolen my money. I saw my husband's single friend, and he was looking at me like I was eye candy, and I decided to experiment on the thoughts in my head. I drank my 4th mojito, and before I knew it, I was exchanging saliva with the 3rd guy at the club. I didn't know how I had even made it home. I just remembered that I had found myself at the front door of my home the following morning at around 4, and I remembered my husband had gone on a business trip. So I thanked whatever was up above for that blessing. Luckily, his mother also wasn't living with us at that time. She had gone back home, and it was just me and my husband, so there was no one who saw me coming back from a club at around 4 in the morning. I let myself in, and all the memories of what I had done floated back into my head. I played it cool for the next couple of weeks. My husband hadn't found out about the club incident, and he hadn't also found out about the missing money. I didn't know how I was going to get back $15,000 to put back in the safe, so I began pawning off my jewelry. All the fine things I had gotten with my daddy's money. I needed to at least replace half of what was missing. Then I would clean about the remaining half. But the money was just too much, and no matter how many things I pawned, it barely reached 1/3 of the money. With my salary that came in at the end of that terror-filled month, I was able to make the money up to 1/3. This was after I had already pawned off all my things. I was broke and still had a huge debt to repay. Then everything became worse. My husband found out about the fact that I had kissed 3 different guys. I had no idea how he found out. One moment I was at home trying to prepare dinner, and he stormed into the house with a picture of me kissing his friend on his phone. I couldn't say anything as I was speechless. What would you have expected me to say? Well, I tried reasoning with him and told him how it was because I had too much to drink. That was why I had kissed his friend. I made the mistake of saying it was only his friend that I kissed, and my husband hated lies. He tore into me the next moment and produced pictures of me kissing two other guys. I cried and begged, but he threw me out of the house that evening and told me he was going to get back at me for disgracing me amongst his friends. That night I had slept on the curb, and the next morning my husband threw all my belongings outside and burned them right in front of me. Could you imagine that? How could he be so cruel? I begged, but he didn't answer me. When he was done, he told me if I wasn't at the office to sort out the mess I had created with the client's work, the police would come knocking, and he didn't want to see me in his house by evening. You all, this was how I went to work with yesterday's clothes because my husband had burnt all my things when he knew full well I prized appearance above all else. I went straight to his office when I had managed to gather my pride and enter work, and went straight to his office. This man handed me divorce papers then and there and told me I had to go and meet the client and sort out the mess of the company, and he asked me to get out of his office. I had never been so embarrassed in my life. The snickers from the office people as I left was enough to haunt me to my deathbed, and I wasn't even kidding. I went to the location my husband had given me, and as I entered the building, a group of people rushed me and moved me into an alleyway and gave me the beating of my life. They all had women billed and told me to sign those divorce papers and not to mess with my husband again. He had hired female goons to rough me up, and they had roughed me up so badly that I ended up in the hospital. That was when my husband came to the hospital and watched me sign the papers with my broken hands. A week later, I got out of the hospital on debit, and I asked all my friends for a place to stay, but they had all abandoned me. Apparently, my husband had told them I was cheating on him and had run away with his money. I hadn't even stepped out of the hospital when my husband and a man approached me. He had found out about the missing money, and I either paid him right then and there or get arrested by the police officer for stealing. I didn't have any money to pay him, so I was whisked away to the police station. I had no friends, no money, and no husband. I begged my ex-husband to let me out of there. I could get the money for him, but he wasn't having it. I had stolen from him and cheated on him and brought him nothing but bad luck. I explained I had wanted to double the money, but once again my plea fell on deaf ears. I stayed in the cell for a month. I was about to go mad from why my life was like this and how I had no money. I almost got admitted to the hospital again because I kept on getting texts on how I was supposed to pay my hospital bills, and texts from my ex-husband's thugs on how I needed to pay the money I owed. If not, they were going to beat me up again and make sure I'm crippled this time. How was I supposed to pay the money from inside a prison cell? I had no one to bail me out. They were talking about transferring me to a real prison yard when luckily they got through to my long-distance aunt, and she bailed me out and took me with her to her place in England. That was how I escaped my ex-husband's death threat and learnt my lesson.